Arthur the King is a sports film about a group of adventure racers being guided by a stray dog. This movie is based on a true story where we follow Michael, played by Mark Wahlberg. He's a former adventure racer whose career sunk after leading his team to an embarrassing loss caused by his refusal to listen to his teammates. After a long hiatus, he decides that he wants to take another stab at the Adventure Racing World Championship. During the big race, the team encounters a very intelligent dog named Arthur, who becomes their unofficial fifth teammate that gives them guidance through the rough terrains. So some of these tropes will be quite familiar if you've seen your fair share of sports movies. Like a lot of those movies, this one is about redemption. It's about a man driven by his need to prove himself as an adventure racer and become recognized for more than just an embarrassing loss. So Michael builds his team and enters the race with the expectation that winning will restart his career. What he did not expect, though, was to find a companion along the way. In addition to the little bit of guidance he gives the team, Arthur also brings much needed inspiration to the movie because without it, the story would just completely fall apart. Obviously, he's the real star that the movie is molded around. What I'm saying is that all of the character dynamics and relationships just feel pretty empty. In the first act, they establish some dynamics as Michael rallies each of them, but beyond that, there aren't really many interpersonal connections. That's probably the movie's biggest shortcoming. A lot of stuff happens during their travels, but closure and strengthening their emotional bonds are not very present. There were some seeds planted early on in the movie for certain character dynamics, but those seeds did not get watered, and so they kind of just died. Like, Michael also has a wife and kid at home, and through dialogue, they established that his relationship with them is a little bit rocky. But once the race began, none of that really mattered. That part of the story was never really revisited. The camaraderie might still be enjoyable to some viewers, assuming you can excuse a little bit of cheesiness. Some of the jokes are a bit generic. For example, there's one point where somebody is stuck high up in the mountains dangling, and they're just like, I think I need to pee. So Liam, played by Simu Liu, is very much a character who lives in the digital world. He's always taking pictures and videos of himself, and he's always talking about Instagram and his followers. I think a little bit less of that would have been a lot more. After a while, he was honestly just starting to feel like a two-dimensional character because that's really all he was just a guy who has social media. So things get a lot better once Arthur joins the squad. He is the beacon of hope that just radiates with contagious positivity. He changes the team's dynamic, essentially just by distracting them. He brings the best out of Michael simply by being the only thing that he really appreciates. Michael is otherwise a bit of an egomaniac, case in point, him losing that one race because he wouldn't listen to his teammates. It doesn't really feel like he changes or even grows at all, though. Normally, flawed characters like this overcome their flaws by the end, but it doesn't really seem like he learns anything. He kind of just likes dogs now. I don't want to discredit that, though. Michael and Arthur's relationship was the movie. It's just unfortunate because they don't meet up until, I want to say, about halfway through the movie. Leading up to Arthur joining the squad, we see glimpses of his little doggy endeavors, but the movie mostly covers the adventure race and the obstacles that they go through within that. I'll say that there were a couple instances where the team gets caught in sticky situations that were pretty entertaining. They were very dangerous circumstances, so they really inch you closer to the edge of your seat. It's honestly a very intense feeling seeing people so close to death, even if it is just fictional. You just can't help but sweat from your palms when you see that somebody is actually only a thread of wire away from plummeting to their death. I can't speak for every sport in this movie, but if the rest of them are depicted the way that climbing is in this movie, then it might be a bit underwhelming or even frustrating to watch if you're somebody who partakes in that sport. As somebody who does climb, I'd say that climbing was pretty watered down in this movie. Not that it's a huge shortcoming though, because honestly it's just such a small part of the movie. But naturally I can't help but poke some holes. There is one scene where Michael is doing something unsafe and another character says, "But that breaks every rule of climbing." She said this literally one scene after the team was free soloing, which is even more dangerous. Like, they have some understanding of climbing, you can tell, but they're clearly not very saturated in that culture. The cinematography was pretty good, with the exception of an overuse of close-ups in the first act. There were way too many tight shots. That might sound like a really petty complaint, but honestly, it just gets exhausting watching a movie that looks like this for too long. Of course, once the race begins, they back off from all the tight shots because they want to go wide to capture all that adventuring. So in case I haven't made it clear, this movie mostly relies on puppy sympathy for entertainment. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just a little bit unfortunate because the other aspects of the film were a bit lacking. You definitely have to have a tolerance for cheesy and sometimes tired tropes, but In the end, it was still touching and sweet. Overall, it's a passable film that pulls on the heartstrings and has its occasional moments of excitement. It's fine, even decent at times. I just can't bring myself to say that it's a great movie because of how cheesy it could be and how hollow the character dynamics were. This is a total family movie. If you're looking for something to see in theaters that both kids and adults can enjoy, then this one could be a good choice. But if you're like me and you're pretty tired of predictable sports movies, or if you just don't like dogs, then this one might not be for you. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Problemista.